This lecture is all about data types in JavaScript. So JavaScript provides different data type to hold different type of values. So if you have heard about the data types in any other programming language, it is simply a type in order to hold the different values. So you can have different type of data types like string, and it can be integer, number, booleans, and null is also a data type. So let's see what are the types of the data storage, or basically a data types that is available in a JavaScript. So first one would be your primitive data type, and the second one would be your non-primitive, that is the reference data type. So JavaScript is simply a dynamic type language, as we have already said in the case of a Python, which is also a dynamic type. So that means you don't need to specify the type of a variable because it is dynamic, and it is used by JavaScript engine, or basically the browser. That means you need only to use the var keyword and it will just specify the data type. So in the case of the JavaScript, you have to do something, or basically in the case of the Java, you have to do something like this. So in order to create the integer, in order to create the float variable, you have to just make use of this keyword in order to specify different data type. But in the case of a Python is basically a dynamic type. In the case of Python, you need not simply even add the var keyword in the case of Python, but in the case of JavaScript, you have to just give the var keyword, name of the variable, and give the value or assign the value to this variable. So this is also a dynamic type language. So let me just create one variable over here. Let me say 57 would be the value, and it is basically holding your number. So you can see here we have created the variable that is a, and let me just create another variable. Let me say b, and let me say something that is cricket, and you could see here it is now holding that is string. So the same keyword, that is var, is used, but here it is a different data type. A is holding the number and b is holding the string, which is basically a text which is given inside this double quote. So you can simply see over here the JavaScript is dynamic type language. That means you don't need to specify the type of a variable because it is dynamically used by the JavaScript engine. All you need to do is simply pass the var keyword and just assign what is the value to this variable. So first of all, the JavaScript has 4 or basically 5 primitive data types. That means it has the 5 types of primitive data types, and first one is your string over here. And you can see simply in order to create the string, you have to give any text inside this double quote, or it can be also a single quote. So if I just say C, and if I just give a single quote, and let me say dog, so this is also your string. So if I just print over here, this dog is also a string, which is a primitive data type in a JavaScript. Similar, the next data type would be your number, and it represents the numeric value. Simply over here 57, which is basically holding the number, which is another primitive data types. So the next one would be your boolean, which is either true or false. So if I just say var, and let me say the logic is our variable name, and if I just pass here false, so we have created the boolean variable, which is the name of logic, and it stores false. So boolean is either true or false. You can store either a value which is 0 or 1, which is basically your boolean, which is another data type. And the next one would be your undefined data type, which you can see over here. So if I just say something like var v, And the v, if I just print this v, then you could see the value is undefined. That means you have just created the variable but it is undefined. The value to the variable is not given, which is basically what we say the undefined. And the next one is your null. So the null is the another primitive data types, that means null, which is no value at all. So if I just create the variable that is number and just pass here null, so if I just pass here number or print the number, then it will see null now, not undefined. So in the case of v over here, which was not defined, which is basically the undefined, which is not initialized, given the value which is undefined, but in this case we have given some value to the variable, so it will not show the undefined, it will instead show you null, which is no value at all. So num here doesn't contain any value except the null, which is different from the undefined. So you can see we have the 5 primitive data types, which is the number, string, boolean, null and undefined. So next type of the data type in the JavaScript is non-primitive data types, and we have 3 non-primitive data types, and we'll just study in detail in the upcoming lecture. But just remember, for now we have the 3 non-primitives data type, which is object, array and res expression, which is basically your regular expression. So first and the important would be your object. An object represents the instance through which we can access that members. And the next one would be your array, which is very important, which represents the group of similar values, like we say the list in the case of a Python. And the next one is your regular expression, which is a res expression. So this will be discussed in the upcoming lecture, but just remember that we have the 2 types of data type in the JavaScript. First one is primitive, which represents this sum of these important data types, which is the boolean, number, string, null and undefined. And the non-primitive data types, which is the advanced lecture, in the upcoming lecture will be covered, and that are object, arrays and regular expression. So this is the wrap for this lecture. See you in the next one.